welcome back to another episode of Unscripted and Unchoreographed. I'm your host Neve, and we have my lovely co-host Sarah, and tonight we are very excited to have a wonderful artist, multidisciplinary artist, Deo Laguipo. How are you, Deo?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
The first question that we usually ask is, how did you get into the art?
I've always been doing it since I was younger, as far as I can remember. I think my earliest memory is like tracing something. And then my parents were like, oh my god, that's so cool. They were like really supportive about it. And then I actually started drawing. My parents kind of just really pushed it to the point that became like kind of annoying a little bit. Because it felt like it was something that I had to do and it wasn't like really fun anymore. So a bit of there was a bit of like a break during like my teens where I didn't like do any arts like at all.
So your parents were really supportive about you doing the arts, and did you have any artists in your family?
I actually do have a lot of like artists, like cousins. The arts in our family is kind of like in the like bigger family in the Laguipo family is like not something that you can really make money out of. At least that's what my family thought, except for like my parents, especially my dad. So he was like kind of really pushing me. He was like buying me all these paints, even though I was like, I don't really want to paint. He was like telling me to like paint all of these like realistic, like Da Vinci-esque paintings at like age 12 or something. It was kind of like that kind of support that he was giving me.
Did he just really want you to be an artist, or was that just completely random?
His brother is like a painter. I think he saw that I could do something like what he was doing. He was just kind of like, if you do this, people will love it. You probably get a lot of money out of it. I don't know. I think it was more of a financial thing for him than like supporting me in what I want to do. I think if he didn't like do that, I wouldn't really have the incentive to kind of do what I'm doing now, which is earning income from the arts. I feel like he was like laying the groundwork before I even realized it.
You do a lot of different art forms. Could you explain what they are, what your practice is? Because you're a videographer, tattoo artist, photographer.
I started off as an illustrator. It was actually during COVID. I was in college and I was like, I need to make money because my internship was canceled because of COVID. So I started like doing Fiverr. It's like a freelancing website where like people ask you to draw something, pay you, and then you like submit it. And I started off as that. And then I went on to this other freelancing website to get more steady clientele for manga illustrations. So I actually have had a client and he like wrote an entire plot line and then like a story, and I basically like drew out the manga and published it in America. This is my first ever published. It's called Savior Guardian X. It's like by an independent writer, and he wanted to collaborate. Well, not collaborate, but like pay me to draw it for him.
Can I ask you, did you study illustration or fine art in college, or what were you studying in college?
I was studying Mechatronics Engineering in college in DC, so nothing related to the arts at all.
Were you just specializing in manga, or were you doing kind of other illustrations?
I was doing mostly manga work. Like I had a few clients who like wanted me to draw their stories out, like webcomics. When I started off on Fiverr, I started doing realistic portraits or stylized versions of people's portraits, like what AI can do now, basically. Like AI completely eradicated that role. If I was still doing that, literally would be gone instantly.
That is so scary because that's not that long ago you were doing that, right?
Yeah, the way AI has just completely taken over the world is crazy. Especially the art world. I feel like it's so stupid to start off testing out AI with arts. I feel like there's other problems to be like to implement it on than art. It's not essential for somebody to get a new profile picture that looks like you, but you're in like a queen outfit, royal outfit, something like that. That's one of the things that was kind of like affecting the arts that really bothered me.
You had a line of work and now suddenly AI is taking over it, so that is not there anymore, which does sound crazy because it's come around so quickly. ChatGPT, it was just grammar and things like that, but now it can take on images. How much has that affected your work? Do you think there should be maybe things in place to protect artists?
I feel like it didn't affect me directly because I was already like doing something else by the time that the whole AI thing came about. But it really affected the art world completely to the point that it's like, when you're like trying to look for references in on Pinterest nowadays, you can't scroll down a little bit before you find an AI generated picture, and you can't really use that as a reference because there's so many little things that don't make sense anatomy wise. Yeah, in that way it really affected me when I'm trying to look for a proper reference for like a certain pose or like a color scheme. In terms of AI being submitted into competitions, I've seen a lot on Instagram that's like by artists or something. I don't think you're an artist if you specifically use AI to generate artwork, because they use other people's artworks to train the AI to be able to generate this. And it's like you're not making anything, you're just putting a bunch of, well, as far as I know, you're putting a bunch of words to somehow generate this picture. But you didn't like put the work in, you didn't put the hours in, you didn't like slave over the artwork for hours on end and go crazy trying to render it properly and make it look good. There's a lot of protest against AI art generation, or at least like stop using other people's work to train their AI. But as far as I know, I don't think it's really gotten anywhere. It's kind of like a losing battle, to be honest.
I think it's a general thing. When you look at an AI image, you can just see it's AI. But could you just give some examples of maybe in terms of anatomy, or like you said, things that just don't make sense? Um, what are the ones that maybe an artist would notice more so than an untrained eye?
Sometimes they have like 6 fingers, or their arms are slightly too long. Basic proportions. You could probably tell that like their elbow goes a little past your waist, and it's like it doesn't really look right, but if you don't look too hard, it's not noticeable. But nowadays, it's getting really hard to tell if an image is AI generated or not, if you look closely in the background and stuff. And what's worse is like companies, like huge companies, are using AI generated images in their like magazines and their websites. And it's like, you guys are a huge fucking company. You can't afford to pay an artist to like draw something for you. Like, why are you cutting down costs on this?
It's come up a few times in different chats where people seem to see the arts as the number one place to cut back and make a saving. Ryan said it like A is the first letter in the alphabet, arts. It's easier to make your cuts at the beginning than later on at the end. Even in big corporations, it's just the same.
It's so sad because it's like, I feel like if you take out the arts in a lot of things, you're just left with like a soulless husk. I feel like art really puts life into something, even if it's a good marketing scheme for your company. You hear so many like animators losing their jobs, artists in video game companies. It's just so sad because it's like without them at the beginning, you wouldn't have a company. You wouldn't have a product, and then you're just discarding them like nothing. I feel like I was lucky that I didn't stay into the portraiture route, because there's definitely different avenues that you can go into, even in illustration, or like in terms of like manga illustration. I think it's easier for writers to hire artists to really get their vision right in terms of like making a comic book or a manga. Because you can actually like communicate and be like, I want to change this, and then maybe like we can change the angle or something. But I have to say there has been like parts of AI that has been helpful in terms of making my workflow easier. So I had like a long-term client a few years ago, before AI was really like implemented, to make illustrations for his novel, his like sci-fi novel. And his references for his main characters that I was supposed to draw were these clip art basic of like a person with like blue eyes or like short hair, brown hair. So it was hard to like make good illustration from that. And then he contacted me again a few years later because he wants to work together again. And this time, when he sent me references, they were AI generated images of what he wants his characters to look like. So I was like, okay, I understand more now. And it's easier for me to use that to draw out your characters and design them.
How then did you move from illustration? Did you go straight into photography, videography, or what happened next for you?
Straight after like my last illustration project, I got a job as an engineer. So my main focus shifted to that. I was working as a process engineer for a bit in the semiconductor industry. I felt like I was losing touch with myself. It was literally like what you see on like TikTok about corporate life. It's soulless and everybody's just like pretending to know things, and you just have useless meetings in person that could have been like an email, or you could just do it online. It was always to like appease the higher ups. It was driving me crazy because I was like, what are we doing? We're not saving the world. It drove me crazy, and the fact that I wasn't being as creative, or I didn't have like an outlet, or I didn't have energy to do anything art related, it kind of drove me to a point where it's like, I can't do this anymore. So during that time, I was seeing like a lot of like cinematography on TikTok, and I wanted to like try it out. And I've always kind of wanted to get into photography, but I always had trouble with editing, like using Lightroom. When I bought myself like a really good camera and a really good lens, that was the point where I was like, okay, I'm gonna take this seriously. This is gonna be a new outlet for me. And putting in that money straight away instead of getting like starter kit or something was like, okay, I am investing myself right now. I'm gonna hate myself if I spend all this money for nothing. So I kind of just like use that as motivation to actually like take this seriously. I started taking photos, recording like cinematic videos when I was traveling around. And then one of my friend's friends is a singer, and she makes her own music. She has like a band. She was playing a gig, and my friend was like, oh, you can take pictures of her. So I did. It was really cool, and it was like my first step into that door. It wasn't even like, oh, really wanted to get into music photography, which is like kind of the main thing that I'm doing now. It was kind of like, I'm here. I found myself there, which is really cool. That's how I kind of like got into photography and like videography. Videography came because I wanted to make cinematic videos. Photography came because my friend asked me to take pictures of his friend, and it just kind of like took off from there. It was a good learning experience at the start, like learning how to edit like through music photography. Through that, I realized I really like doing this, like this certain genre of photography. I feel like you have more of like a goal. Like, sometimes I see videos on YouTube where like, oh, I'm going on a photo walk and I'm gonna see what I find to take pictures of. And it's like, okay, like, what am I actually gonna take pictures of? But when you're at a gig, you're like, okay, I'm taking a picture of her, I'm gonna get this angle, and then, all that kind of things. So it was a good starting point to have a main focus. All like the things that happened was all the necessary steps that I needed to get here. It all kind of just makes sense now.
How did you get into tattooing? Because obviously it came from the illustrating, but like, how do you become a tattoo artist? Do you have to be an apprentice? What do you do?
Okay, basically, during that college, I was getting into tattoos as well. Near the end of college, I was like, maybe I should try tattooing, or like try getting into it. And then I was like doing all this research and what kind of things I have to do. This was probably like 2021 or something. I had like an opportunity to be an apprentice to somebody in Cork where my sister lives, and it's like her husband's friend. But I didn't want to stay in Cork. And a week after that, I got my engineering job. So that I put that in the back burner. I had never thought of it again until last year, when one of the tattoo artists I followed for like years in college, I see on his story, he was like, I might be looking for an apprentice. It was like an open call. So immediately I was like, I need to send him my portfolio. Since I was like already an artist, I already have so many things in my portfolio. So I sent him my portfolio, my art account and stuff. He messaged me, he was like, hey, I really like your work. Do you want to like meet up or come by the studio and have a chat? And I was like, okay. And I remember like getting that message and I was like shaking. I was like, me? I've always wanted to like get a tattoo from him. I already like admired his work, and so I would love to learn from somebody like him. I went in for the interview, showed him my portfolio, and that I was doing photography and videography. I felt like that gave me the edge because I could help him with his social media. Again, another building block that I put in before I even noticed. So like when I went in for the interview, he kind of was like, oh, so like when do you want to start? So like I started doing that. It didn't really turn out too great, to be honest. To this day, I still don't really know what happened. I feel like there was some kind of like power play going on, and he was like barely teaching me anything. He wouldn't really communicate with me properly. Like I would ask him what his schedule is so I know when to come into the studio, and then he wouldn't really tell me until like the night before I'm supposed to come in, or the morning of. And it's like, I'm not on call here. I feel like there needs to be some kind of respect going on for both ways. It was getting to a point where I was really getting anything from this, so I've learned as much as I could from him. I set up like a studio at home. I invested in really good tattoo machine and good materials. Basically renovated the entire room to make it look as close to a tattoo studio as I could. And the rest of the house, because I wanted to be like a welcoming, inviting place for my clients. So that's kind of how I started off after leaving the apprenticeship. I never realized how lucky I was that I actually got that on the first go, because after I left, I was like, okay, maybe I can look for another one. So there was no one willing to take in somebody to teach them. Their studio's too small, or they're too busy, or like they're just like not interested, which is fine. But I also feel like there's a lot of toxicity in the tattoo industry. I think for like apprentices as well. Like I heard like a few stories, not in Dublin but online, about like people abusing their apprentices and treating them as slaves. It was really hard to look for another apprenticeship, so I kind of learned as much as I could by myself and tattooing on people who were willing to be first test subjects, which is crazy.
And I can gladly say that Deo is an excellent, very gentle, like the most gentle tattoo artist I have ever had. Why would an artist, even maybe yourself in the future, want an apprentice? Like, how do you work together as an apprentice? Do you just watch them? Do you get to tattoo?
I started off watching him tattoo. Like, you can just watch me for like 2 weeks or something. But then I was like watching for like 3 days, and he was like, okay, you can start on the machines. And I used like his machine and fake skin. He was like teaching me some of the fundamentals. Why would a shop want an apprentice? Sometimes it's extra help on the shop floor. Somebody to clean, somebody to talk to the clients when they come in, do admin stuff, go on like a coffee run for the artist. Basically just like a helping hand, unpaid. It's unpaid or you pay them to teach you. But I think it's less common in Dublin to pay them. I think it's more like you work for free and then they teach you. But I've heard their mentors not even having the time to teach them. Even if you do get the chance to be an apprentice, there is always a gamble. It's like, okay, this might not be a good fit for you, or you might not like the environment or your mentors or the other people working there. I feel like there's just so much like toxicity in that industry.
Is it a very male dominated industry?
Yeah, definitely.
So how do you navigate that as a female identifying artist? Yeah. Do you think that also possibly adds to the toxicity?
I think that might have played a part on why my mentor treated me. It being a male dominated industry is not really new to me, because like engineering is also a male dominated industry. And photography is kind of is, to be honest. Like, you see, if you're like in a photo pit on in a concert, most of the photographers there are male. There's rarely a female photographer in there. I've definitely heard stories online of people like being sexually harassed by their mentors. Now I'm working in a studio that's like owned by a woman, and it's literally the nicest place that I've ever worked in. The first 3 tattoos that I have gotten was from like a male tattoo artist. I can't really gauge or like have too much of a say on this because my pain tolerance is so low. But I remember particularly that my first 3 were like really painful, and I remember my artist like holding me down. It wasn't until I started learning to tattoo that it's like you're not supposed. Well, like I guess some people have different ways of tattooing. They have different methods. Maybe they need to put a lot of pressure on you so they can be stable. They're using you as an anchor or something. But I've heard like people saying that like it gets to a point that it hurts, that they're pressing down on a certain part of you that's like you're not able to like breathe properly, or it's like uncomfortable. But you're not supposed to be going too deep into the skin anyway, because it might cause a blowout where like the ink spreads underneath and you can kind of see it looks like a bruise. A lot of male tattoo artists pride themselves in being heavy-handed for some reason. There's so much like weird things that don't make sense in tattooing, where it's like there's some people that are like you can't use numbing cream because you have to earn your right to have tattoos, and it's like who said that? Like, why? That makes no sense, because it's like it's so unnecessary. If you can not suffer, you don't have to. It's like you don't have to prove anything to anybody. When I got my first tattoo, it was in the most like intimidating looking tattoo studio. Like black walls, gold accents. It's very like baroque, gothic interior design, and it just made me feel so intimidated. And it's like I'm already gonna go through the pain of getting a tattoo. I would want to feel calm. There's been some instances where like, okay, I wanna just get a spontaneous tattoo, but then you walk past a tattoo shop and it's full of like scary, intimidating, big men. I feel like it's so intimidating to come in, especially as like a girl. Like some of my clients tell me like I tried to get a fine line tattoo from my local tattoo shop, and it was like one of those types of tattoo shops. They kind of made her feel like stupid for wanting like a cute little star or flower here, and they didn't have the right needle size because for some reason a lot of traditional male tattoo artists don't like fine line things, so her tattoo came out thicker than she wanted. There's like a certain part of it where they're not confident in that style and they don't want to mess it up. Fine line tattoos are so much harder than people realize because there's less room for error. Because it's so simple. If you are shaky at any point, you will be able to see it. I can understand why some tattoo studios don't like doing it, and a lot of tattoo artists think that it doesn't age that well. But if it's like a big studio, if it's well known enough, I feel like they could take in a fine line artist to cater to any walk-ins that might come in. I feel like if you're taking walk-ins, you have to be a little bit more universal, that kind of thing. And you can find us on Instagram at misotattoo.dublin. You can find me on my tattoo account. It's at deo.inked. My photography account is at digital.deo.
Do you have any advice to artists starting out or to a younger self?
I feel like just don't give up, because you never know where all the things that you do is going to take you and how that's going to benefit you in the future. Like I've done so many things that was like, okay, that helped me now and I didn't really see it before. So yeah, just keep doing everything, try everything. You never know how that's going to help you.
If you had a magic wand, change anything about the arts, particularly in Ireland, or funding wise, bursaries, mentorships, apprenticeship, yeah, policies against AI, what would that maybe be?
In a perfect world, just give artists more money to support themselves into creating and pursuing their arts. I didn't mention this, but I got an arts grant for my photography, and it was so helpful. I wouldn't have imagined getting it at all, like especially somebody who's like starting out in that space. But the fact that there's actually like a grant specifically for people starting out or at any stage of their career, I feel like that is so much more helpful than people realized. I think better money management, investing in artists would be great.
Thank you so much, Deo.